15.
Thank you, Ellen. Thank you, Ellen. I'm delighted to be here. When we met earlier, I'm a bit of a sort of late sub for this evening. She said, well, when we put these evenings together, we get a couple of names and then we sort of build around it. So I'm delighted to be your grouting for the evening. I've learned so much tonight. Dysmorphophobia, the condition where someone is good-looking and thinks they're hideous. I know what I've been suffering from for years. It's dysmorphophobia. I've learned a lot about the Times and the gullibility of Times leader writers in the 1920s, which as a Daily Telegraph loyalist doesn't surprise me. And the image of a convent and a gardener going in there for 4 months. We're going to be talking a little bit about Graham Greene. He had rather malleable Catholic principles. He would dearly love to have been there for 4 months, I'm sure. I'm a journalist, so there's a lot of narcissism and ego here, but I'm not, this isn't my 15 minutes. I want to give this 15 minutes to someone you've never heard of. Her name is Barbara. Black space. Barbara on the left here. The space of African exploration tends to be hogged by men. Men with strange facial hair and odd hats, it's in my experience. David Livingstone, Burton, Speke, Stanley, the list goes on. Barbara Greene is a remarkable woman, and I came across her story, and it's her story I want to tell you about. In 1935, she goes on a journey. She goes with her cousin. There he is on the right, Henry G. Greene, he was christened. You know him as Graham Greene, the great novelist, perhaps arguably the greatest novelist in English from the UK in the 20th century, a man who gave us so, so much. 1935, when this photograph is taken, none of this is true. He's down on his luck. He's written 4 novels. They've all canned, had a miserable time. He's living in Oxford in rented accommodation. He needs to make some money. So he goes back to his roots. He's a journalist from the Times. He spent 4 years at the Times as a young man. He goes off to Africa to write some non-fiction. He needs a traveling companion for this journey. The journey will be dangerous. They'll go to Sierra Leone and Liberia, then places largely off the map. So he goes, like any sort of Edwardian moneyed upper-class person, to a drinks party, and he asks around the drinks party, who'll come with me? And the champagne flows, and the brother says no, and the uncle drops his pencil and says he's not interested. Barbara is left standing. She's suitably sloshed. 2 slosh people come together. Do you fancy coming to Liberia? It sounds rather jaunty, she says. 1935. And on such things do great things turn. An amazing choice for this is a lady of a certain class. She was upper middle class. She had her clothes laid out for her for dinner every day of her life. She's taken to Africa, where her clothes will be eaten by rats. A great change. Sorry, I get my arm. Here she is. This captures a certain flavor. A German newspaper thought it was sufficiently interesting that Barbara Greene would go that they lampooned her as a beauty. There she is, riding crop in hand, gauntlets, looking rather foxy, and the golf clubs. A very, like a good newspaper caricature doesn't do justice to the reality. We're off to Africa. We're off to Sierra Leone. There they are, the moustaches and the funny hats I talked about. Colonialism dominated by the white man. He knows best. You see the sergeant major black figure in the back. You will do as you're told. You will rise no further than the NCO ranks. But this is the I recreated their journey last year. This is the story I describe in my book. But as I mentioned, this isn't about me. This is about Barbara. This is the bridge they used. This is a bridge that's destroyed today, 2009. Bridge on the River Kwai frame. If you could just look down to your left, that's the most important driver for all of Sierra Leone and Liberia's recent history. Humans on a riverbank. Are they drawing water? No. Are they digging gravels for cement? No. They're digging for diamonds. Blood diamonds, the driver for 20, 30 years of turmoil and war. That's the scenario in which I'm going. The Greens, a different scenario. A rolling country, upcountry Liberia, rolling hills, covered in palm trees, incredibly thick and dense. The Royal Geographical Society had a crack at exploring it, wrote it off. Too dangerous and, frankly, too boring. It was called the Grain Coast. It wasn't the Gold Coast where there was gold, the Ivory Coast where there was the Slave Coast. It was the Grain Coast. They only had pepper there, for God's sake. Who's remotely interested in that? So this is why it was a moment of genuine exploration. Off go the Greens. There she is, Barbara. Incredibly proud of this photograph because it's never been shown before. She she leaves London. The last thing she does is she buys a pair of knee-length leather boots, rather fetching things, but she needed some clothes, so she had some shorts made for herself in Freetown, the capital of Sierra Leone, and there they are, the famous shorts. They're famous because you know how when you go on a journey, the smallest things really, really bug you. You know, the guy just picking his nose across in the train compartment, the smallest little things. Graham Greene, after 6 weeks looking at that bottom in those shorts, driven wild. Get rid of those ridiculous shorts, they balloon up. Now, Barbara, she just got stronger and stronger on this journey. She was a woman of a certain type. She was self-deprecating to almost, to the point of masochism. She didn't take herself seriously. She said, oh, I'm so ugly and so gauche and so hefty, she said. I don't see a hefty woman here. I just see an incredibly spirited woman going off on her journey. Obviously, a journey of its time. They took bearers. When I did the journey, no bearers to be found. In 2009, it was simply not done for a Daily Telegraph man to be carried again in Africa. That wouldn't be appropriate. So off I go. But I am carried metaphorically in every possible way because, like any foreign correspondent who's got any honesty about them will tell you that their adventures are only made possible by gatekeepers. Translator doesn't do it justice. Fixer doesn't do it justice. Even guide doesn't. They're gatekeepers. And in the middle there, we have a fantastic character called Johnson Boy, who kept us on the path, kept us fed, kept us safe. The Greens, 1935, hammock bridges across ravines in Upper Liberia, a place of no roads. Graham Greene frames this journey. He calls it Journey Without Maps, because largely there were no maps in the 1930s. It is a little different today. 75 years have passed, so there are some roads, but I thought these bridges, they will have long since gone. There they are today, 2009. Nothing, no wire there, nothing manufactured, no rivet, nothing. This is man taking on a really hostile environment. And a word on the hostility, an incredibly difficult place. The RGS said it was just difficult. The RGS explorers said the climate was the toughest, arguably the toughest in Africa, because we have heat marrying with humidity. Absolutely enervating. Woof. And a thick jungle cover, so no air moves. And the sheer, having been there myself, I've done this journey, it was 350 miles on foot. The Greens did it. There was a little bit of hammock play, as I mentioned. They were carried by their bearers at some point. But just physically surviving that was an astonishing achievement, and it almost proved too much for Graham Greene, as we'll hear. There's the bridge, another beautiful. Imagine climbing the height, to run that pylon line down and making the pylon line that length. This is the four-wheel drive version of the bearer, but you could also get the two-wheel drive version and be a bit more nonchalant, a bit higgledy-piggledy, but this is how it was done in the 1930s, a place without maps. This is where we cut into what Ian was talking about, leprosy, up-country, vicious, cruel disease, cruel, still happening in 2009. I sit with a lady in a leper colony set up by Christians. Those Christian missionaries were driven away in 1980 by the war. They haven't come back. Her disease continues, and the disease remains systemic, an avoidable, manageable disease in a part of Africa which continues to ravage. Remarkable figures, strange figures, slightly discomforting figures. They are devils. Devils as seen in the 1930s. A devil in West Africa is the name given to basically a witch doctor, a person who knows all the spirit world, who knows how to use the power of the spirit world. They know the ancestors' lore, they know the traditions, and they also know they are the vehicle for power. They are the authority figure. In 1935, anthropologists went there. They were baffled by these devils. How bad were they? How good were they? They used the word devil, but there was a strange sort of spectrum range. It wasn't just quite the way that the Christian phraseology or framing of that word. They weren't all evil. There was a whole range. They went from sort of teachers to teachers who might be teaching a young man in an initiation process how to take on the forest, to slightly more sinister ones. So I went there thinking, obviously, it's the 21st century. Google Earth photographs Liberia. There won't be any more left. And here they are. Every village has a devil, a costume figure, quite a benign figure, actually. This one is a minstrel. He dances. It's a man in a mask, in a costume. The crucial thing is no part of the human body must be shown, hence the guy on the right. He has a little brush, and any time that raffia rises up, he pushes it away. And the point is to maintain the illusion. The illusion is of a deity. Graham Greene, by the time he had met his devils towards the end of the journey, skeletally thin. He went as a Catholic. As many of you will know, he converted to Catholicism for the purely expedient reason of getting married to his university sweetheart at Oxford. But he came across these devils and he used them as a metaphor. He began to be very, very suspicious. They were making him ill in some way. They were in some way putting spells on him. And he got thinner and thinner and thinner. And this is where Barbara comes into play. Graham Greene almost dies. It's 1935. It's February. He's feverish. He's being carried in the hammock. He's losing consciousness. Meanwhile, Barbara, this amazing woman with her ballooning shorts and her ability to tolerate rats and her able to forget that sort of middle-class background in Berkhamsted where she had been brought up, she just got stronger and stronger and stronger. Hers was an amazing story, and it goes untold. Graham Greene writes a book about it, Journey Without Maps, doesn't mention her once. No named reference in the first edition. Was it because he was misogynistic? Not really. It was because he was a tortured soul. He didn't even really put himself in the book. He was a complicated man. Indeed, when he was on this journey, he was in fact working as a sort of trainee spy. There's always many levels to Greene. But much more interestingly for me, this astonishing woman, Barbara Greene. Without her, he was so ill, she nursed him to the point where she was convinced he was going to die. She prepares in her mind the Catholic funeral rituals because he is so cadaverous. He's unconscious. She's going to lose him at night. And without him, there would be none of these things. Peter Mandelson would have had to think up of his own title for his political biography. Journalists wouldn't have to say "our man in" whenever they talk about a diplomat, and and there is such a thing as a quiet American. They do come in quiet as well, but Graham Greene was able to put his finger on that. All of that would have gone. All of that would have gone had Barbara Greene not played this amazing role. She goes unheralded. It's been great fun, very rewarding to have the chance to talk a little bit about her here. I met her son today. She died in 1991. She married a German diplomat, an aristocrat. She spent the war avoiding the Gestapo in Berlin. Absolutely amazing. She ended up hiding because Hitler's interpreter, a man called Paul Schmidt, was an old family friend of the Greens and tipped her off when the Gestapo were coming. It was an astonishing story, but like an Edwardian lady, it went untold. One image to say, I'm not making it up, I was there, and as you can see, this is where the dysmorphophobia really cuts in. And one final slide, this is her. She comes home, and in a way, she comes out of her shell. Graham Greene writes a book. He writes a book in 1936, Journey Without Maps. He is a Times journalist, so he's incredibly sloppy, and he libels someone. He libels someone so badly that the book is pulped. It goes off the shelves. It disappears for 12 years. We don't see it again until 1948. Any time you pick up a copy today, it's been cleansed of the libel, and it leaves the field open to Barbara. So this is her. She actually doodles a cover for a book and works on her own notes. It's a terrific book. It's called Lamb Benighted, but you'll forgive her because she misquoted the Liberian national anthem. The Liberian national anthem talks about a race benighted, but she got it wrong. But the thing I love about this is after this astonishing journey, a journey for her of discovery, of change, to go from this comfort zone to a place very, very different from anything she'd been experienced. She ends up in Monrovia. And if you can look closely, the port city on the coast, the capital city, her emblem is a cocktail glass. So if you raise your glass to Barbara Greene and her eternal memory, I'd be very grateful. Wonderful. That's a product placement.